All right, so what we want to talk about now is reproduction, and there's really two types, asexual and sexual. So asexual reproduction means reproducing without sex, and the question is why, and maybe we'll talk about that more in the Zoom. But what you end up with is individuals that are genetically identical. They're basically clones, and there are different types, and there's a few here mentioned: fission, budding, fragmentation, and regeneration. So we want to go through these, and then we'll talk about some different types of sexual reproduction, and then we'll go into meiosis in the next one. So binary fission, this is done in bacteria, and it pretty much looks similar to mitosis, I suppose. The differences are they have a single chromosome. They do not have a nuclear membrane. And the DNA replicates itself into two chromosomes, and then the cell splits in half. So we do not call this mitosis, because again, mitosis is what's happening inside a nucleus. They don't have a nucleus. So bacteria reproduce asexually through a process called binary fission, where they just some early organisms can also. This is a sea anemone. And so this would be fission. So you can see right here, it's kind of pinching in. This is a single individual that got really, really large, and now it's becoming two. Okay, so that would be just called fission, or you could even call this binary fission. All right, the next one is budding, where you actually get a bud off of the main one. So this is a hydra. So it's a freshwater hydrozoa, which it's related to the sea jellies, similar to the sea anemones, and that would have been an anthozoa. But here we go, very, very primitive. Here you can see little tentacles. This would be the adult, and then you can see a little guy growing off to the side. That would be the bud. Once it gets big enough and can feed on its own, it falls off, and voila, it is another individual. And again, they're clones, genetically identical. These on the right here are all redwood trees, and they're all clones. And what has happened is, you can see there is a stump here in the middle. That tree has died. But these little guys coming up, these huge guys coming up off the sides are clones, buds of this original tree. So they're all genetically identical. And then one a little more famous is fragmentation and regeneration. So we have some organisms like the lizard over here on the left. This guy has it's an adult, has lost its tail, and it's built that way, that they have the ability to close their vessels and quickly reduce the bleeding. It's a protective measure, and then the tail will grow back in these little compartments. So that is the closest animal maybe to us, a large vertebrate that actually has some ability to do this. And then on the right hand side, we're looking at sea stars, different species, and they're growing back. So here's typically have 5 arms, and this one on the bottom here, you can see 4 with the little tiny one getting ready to come in here. And then here we have the arm is actually growing. There's enough of what we call the central disc right here for it to continue. So these little arms are starting to come out. So this thing is regenerating, and we become a full sea star. And then this is my favorite. What they've done with these are little flatworms called planaria. And you cut them up, you cut them in half, the head will grow a tail, the tail will grow a head. And well known for this, high school. This is one of our things that I think I mentioned to you, that you see eye to eye. I got in trouble and sent to the principal's office. But we were given a planaria, me and my lab partner. The whole class was broken up into pairs, and we got our own planaria, and we were given a razor blade, which I'm not sure they do in high school, but they gave us a razor blade, and they told us to cut them in half. And so everybody did. And again, the head would grow a tail, and the tail would grow a head. Well, me and my lab partner, who was also named Mark, decided to do it differently. So instead of cutting it like this, we actually cut it right down the middle to about here. And we ended up with a two-headed planaria, which we thought was totally cool. But I remember the day he checked them, came around to the desk and looked in and saw what we did and sent us to the principal's office. And so we're sitting in there, and the principal's like, "Why are you here again?" And I'm like, "I don't know, trying to learn something." But anyway, so it wasn't well received, but pushed me toward biology eventually. Okay, so the next one is sexual reproduction. And so we have couple one and couple two, and looking at the kids, whose kids are whose. And I'm going to tell you, I don't remember. I took this picture so long ago. I'm not sure which one was one, but the purpose, what is the purpose of sexual reproduction? The whole purpose is genetic diversity. Anybody ever asked? That's what the purpose is. So you are different than your parents. That is the whole, it is recombining DNA recombination. All right, so there are different processes. So here's the frogs you can see, and we've got a female frog who's typically larger on the bottom, and then we've got a male on the top, and actually she is more apt to lay eggs in this position. And why is the male doing that is the question, and we want you to realize is external fertilization. And so she is going to lay the eggs into the water, and then he is going to put his sperm on them. So you will see this happen over and over, and he is positioning himself to be in the best spot to get his sperm on those eggs. There may be other males around, and actually I saw National Geographic where things were drying up, and there was one female, like 8 males, and I felt bad for her because they were all trying to pull the male off so they could be on. And she was just being tossed all over the place. So, but definitely that is what we're seeing here. So what I would like you to show you this and ask you now, which one of these, this is parthenogenesis, which one of these is the female? Now remember the last one, the male was on top. So on this one, the female is on top and the bottom because there is no male here. Parthenogenesis is this really cool process where the female does not need a male. What happens is the egg will actually just double its chromosomes, and that will develop into an adult female. And so this happens in one of our local species called a whiptail lizard. Now they can reproduce sexually normal with males and females, but some of those species are out in the desert in extreme conditions where there's very few individuals. And so this process makes sense if you can't find a male. They used to think, and they're finding this isn't true, although it does help. The female on top is actually acting like a male. And what this does is actually elevates the hormones in the female to help her go through that process of parthenogenesis. They thought it was actually necessary, but in laboratories they find out it's not. Although it will encourage the behavior it'll encourage parthenogenesis with the activity, but it is not necessary. And these guys are not the only ones that do it. It's found in frogs, it's found in toads, it's found in sharks, some fish. So yeah, actually the Long Beach Aquarium had a shark born with a shark that had been in there by itself forever and a day. And everybody's kind of, what the hell just happened? But it was parthenogenesis. And I do want you to know that it is sexual reproduction. There is differences because each egg is not identical. You could be, and we haven't done genetics yet, but you could be homozygous, which you have the same trait for both, and then that means the egg would have the egg would replicate it, and of course have 2 of the same. But if you're heterozygous for a trait with a dominant trait and a recessive trait, depending on the egg is going to get one or the other. So if it has the dominant trait and then it replicates itself, it has 2 of the dominant traits or genes. And then the other one would have 2 of the recessive genes. So there is some genetic diversity going on, just not quite as much as in sexual reproduction. And there are no males coming out of this. All right, the next one is hermaphrodites. And this means they have both sexes. And you have a hermaphrodite right outside your door. And this is earthworms. Earthworms would be an example where they have both male and female parts. And on the left is a leech, which is also an annelid. And again, those also would be in the together, and they're have both sexes. So the question then is, what's the advantage of being a hermaphrodite? And what most people quickly go to is you can impregnate yourself, and that is not an advantage. The whole purpose of sexual reproduction is genetic diversity. If you're breeding with yourself, it would be more energy efficient just to be asexual. So the question is then, why does this make sense? Well, energy wise, you see a lot of species like humans and others have gone to the process where it's usually a male and a female, and a lot of species are like that. And that way, that individual could put their energy into being that one sex. You don't have to support both reproductive tracts and things like that. So it is a technique used, but not all animals are like that. And there's even a variability in male and female in species. And so what happens here is, what you don't do is impregnate yourself, but what you can do is increase your chances of impregnation. One of the things that happens, and I used to do this in the class, I would joke around about, okay, so here we're going to have sex. I'm going to turn off the lights and close the door, and then you go find a partner. Now, if it's in the dark, what happens is, as you're searching around, you need to find the opposite sex. And so everybody you run into is not a potential partner. But if you are a hermaphrodite, anybody you run into is a potential partner. And even best case scenario is you both walk away impregnated. And so there are some advantages again, but then the energy cost on the other end of maintaining both sets of organs might counteract that. So kind of a different idea. And then there's some sequential hermaphrodites, which means that they change sexes. And so this is a wrasse. It's a type of fish. And we have several off our coast that do this. The sheephead wrasse does it. The Garibaldi is our local marine fish, state fish, orange fish off the coast. They also do this. Whereas typically what you end up with is a male and a bunch of females. And that also makes sense because what you want to do is one male can impregnate a bunch of females. And so if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. If I've got an aquarium tank and I've got a species that can actually change sexes, what I'm going to want is one male and multiple females, maybe 2 males, just in case the one male's shooting blanks, but keeping it that way. And what we find is typically in these species, it's usually the largest one that turns male. And so if you remove the male, the largest female usually will be the one that will go, oh, hey, I'll turn. And there's a physiological change where they start producing sperm and become a male. They've now done studies where they found out once a female gets a certain size, she won't flip. And it turns out her personal advantage is, as she's become so big, she can lay so many eggs, it's better for her to actually stay female. So there's this process going on. So I'm showing you a picture of the big male and a female, but I'm really lying to you because this picture is actually 2 males and a female. And what happens is one of these is what we call a sneaker male. And it's kind of camouflaged. It is a male, but it looks like a female. And so for the male, what he does is he does this little dance with a female to get her to see if she's receptive, and then they put sperm and egg in the water. So he's dancing along to get the female. Well, this other male will come up and dance next to him too, acting like a second female. So he thinks, well, I'm just so hot. I'm trying to, I've got two females here. And then what happens is when that female starts to lay her eggs, he rushes in and throws his sperm on them. So he's just kind of hanging out waiting for that to happen. So he's got a camouflage. So all kinds of, so it's crazy out there. And then the human life cycle. Just what I want to make sure you understand is we have 46, we're diploid. That's a term that I should probably introduce, which means we have 2 sets of chromosomes. So if you hear where our eggs and sperm have 23 chromosomes, and then that's a haploid number, and then our diploid number is 46. Okay, and then we looked at karyotypes last week in the lab, and we had you look at those. And so this would be a normal karyotype of a male, because you can see the X and the Y chromosome there. And so what happens is our eggs are haploid, and then we have our diploid zygote, and then that goes into development, and we go through meiosis to make the haploid. So this is a typical human life cycle. So we are diploid, 2 sets, and then this is haploid. And then going through sexual life cycles, there's this alternation of generations, the benefits for being haploid and diploid, and I talked about it more in Bio 2. But I want you to make sure you understand that not every organism on the planet does it that way. So most animals are diploid with a haploid gametes. But you're going to see some plants that are diploid like us, but they also have a haploid plant level. And then some plants like mosses, actually their haploid is the dominant one. So we teach that in Bio 2. So it's not all like us. And then we have unicellular, multicellular organisms. Some of them are haploid, some of them are diploid. So it's all over the map on what things will do. And we look at this more in the Bio 2 class, not this class. But anyway, that's it for this lecture.